Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome back to another Back to Basics practice management session. Glad to have you here today. I am thrilled for my guest this morning. We are going to be talking about information technology. And we have Fred Jackson, who's the owner of Nucleus Computer Services. And just a brief bio about Fred is that after completing an MBA from Temple University, he decided to start his own business. Nucleus provides technology consulting, managed services, and IT support to small business and residential clients in Philadelphia area. And the focus is on the Chester, Delaware, and South Montgomery counties. Team members have significant experience supporting dental, optometry, and ophthalmology practices. They help install and configure their practice management software and assist them with HIPAA compliance. So without further ado, let's dive into this topic of information technology. Hi, Fred. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Thank you for being our guest. And, as you know, all of us, small business or large otherwise, are, pretty much familiar with computers, right? I think computers I feel like either have run our lives or, are part and integral of our lives, as we continue on as
They're
business.
everywhere. Yeah.
Yes, everywhere. Absolutely. Having said that, I wanted to ask you a few questions, and in relationship to physician practices, and I see that your area of experience is dental, optometry, and ophthalmology practices. But I do think that it's translatable across other specialties also in relationship to deciding when to consider purchasing a computer. Let's say a new practice, a brand new dental or optometrist or ophthalmologist, they're venturing out on their own. They might have been, in a corporate setting and now decides they wanted to break off on their own, or they might have been in a group and decided to also, again, break out on their own. When is that? Like, what should be the consideration? When should they begin the process, for hardware, desktop, laptop, is it an iPad, is it after construction? If it's a new building, if it's an existing building, probably the interior is being remodeled. And so, is it when the front desk is done, the exam room's completed? So when should that be?
I think it should be from the beginning. They should look at everything, but it's kind of a continuous process where things will change, where you're renovating a space or you're constructing a new space and you run into issues. They have to kind of constantly go back and forth, but they should look at the physical space as one of the things they should consider. And also, they should look at their practice management software very early, because that determines everything else they get. Their computers, maybe a server or servers, the tablets, laptops, all the hardware and other software they get comes from the practice management software. But I would begin as soon as possible looking at your design and your costs, and then that way you can also get a proposal and get a budget and save and put money away for that expense as well.
Okay, so it sounds like at the beginning, as you're working with your, construction, your architect or anyone that would be, so that would be next in line is what I heard, I think, in terms of, as soon as possible. So that way they can make that type of decisions. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, and there's certain things like your physical space. You want to plan to add the cabling and certain things while they're doing the remodeling or construction, because the walls will be open and you can fish all the cabling through at that time. It's a lot harder, obviously, once you have the walls
Right.
in place, and they say, "Oh, I need to cable the computers and the network." At that time, later on, it's more difficult. We've run into that with prospects that have asked us help with the
Mhm.
cabling, and one that converted a bank into a dental practice. And it was
Oh, wow.
a lot easier at the beginning when the walls were open and they weren't filling in certain areas with cement to be able to pass the cabling through at that time. But those
Oh,
are some of
my.
the considerations. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's important. What about training? Is that sort of further down the line, like after all the, again, the construction, the walls are up, you have your cabling, you now have, agreed to the type of hardware, the type of network, and then the practice management software. So is that, a little further down because, it's kind of like closing, nearing the opening, but not entirely because it's having to be able to, train the staff, right? Or potential staff that they're
Yeah,
going to be
I would say
hiring.
somewhere during along the line when you're doing the construction work, then the training, if you can get a few computers with a practice management software on it, then you can kind of train them, get them ready so you're ready to start in as soon as the construction and everything is done right after that, because you're putting a lot of expense into everything, and you want to start obviously seeing patients as soon as possible to be able to make up for that expense. But usually you can get trainings with the company, like the practice management software company can also go through trainings with you and help you out um, at any time. So, yeah,
Now, are those trainings, just out of curiosity, are they online trainings or are they in person? Is that combination?
a combination of both. Yeah.
I see, a combination of online and in person.
Yeah, yeah. The
Okay.
online, the practice management companies can probably help you online. But also, if you start setting up a computer, they can also remote in and go over things with you. Uh, but we do trainings in person as well.
Okay, so there's different modes of channel that the staff can be trained.
Yes,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
exactly.
Great. So now let's switch our let's switch our question to a practice that's been established. They have been in practice for quite some time, a few years under their belt, and the practice is considering an upgrade. And there might be a renovation, there might be there might be an expansion. Now that obviously the opposite of that is also downsize, right? So what hard again going back to what they have now and looking to upgrade their hardware, software, network, and practice management software updates, the necessities, right, the essentials. When should they consider that in their capital budget or computer budget, because there's a shelf life, right, in terms of a computer, in the technology, or sort of in the instance of what's up to date or relevant and things like that. So when is that? And then the second question would be, how to save for it. Is that like an annual consideration, even though we're not going to purchase it today, but like maybe 3 4 years from, not 3 4 years, but let's say 2 3 years, we're looking to upgrade and expand. When should we start putting away that upgrade?
Yeah, usually I say that the computer server life is going to be about 4 to 5 years. So you can plan, once you've gotten new computers, you can plan in 4 or 5 years, we're going to have to replace those and get an idea of the costs. Of course, the costs will go up with time, with inflation and everything. But for an existing practice, it really depends on the specifics of the situation, their physical space, if they want to replace their practice management software, if they're adding new employees, they're expanding or contracting, how we would respond to that and what planning they would need to do is going to be very different for one that's contracting versus one that's building out a new, adding on to their existing space, or they're changing the practice management software. Will take a lot of retraining and maybe purchasing new equipment and purchasing tablets if they want to become more mobile. and be able to show x-rays to patients through the tablet, then that takes specific planning for that. But usually you want to plan that. I would say a lot of them, if they have extra cash, they can use it maybe in the end of the year. It's for tax purposes. You can use that capital expense at the end of the year. Or at the beginning of the year, a lot of them do it because you have the budget set out for the year and you know what more or less what your revenues and expenses are going to be. Um, but if you plan out 4 to 5 years for replacing the computers, then you can kind of go back. I would save, if you have a total amount that you're going to spend, an idea, then you can kind of go. I like to go back to almost weekly what you need to put away, and then backtrack from yearly to monthly to weekly and then almost daily. So you can make sure that you plan to save for that, because you don't want to be caught, oh, I with a few weeks to go, and then you have to put aside, somehow come up with $20,000 for an upgrade.
Oh, right, right. Obviously, that's in saving that. So that's good news that there's that timeline. You can think about if you're looking further out in the future between what we discussed between 4 to 5 years. Now, is that conversation then coming to you and say, I am looking to, we think that we're going to expand and we think that there might be, a growth or expansion. And again, conversely, it could be also a downsize, within that time frame, 4 to 5 years. Do we have that conversation with you at the, let's say, or at the beginning of the fifth year, this is what we're looking to project, and then what we need, as a practice in terms of upgrade.
Yeah, I would say like the fourth or fifth year would be good to have it, as long as you have like 6 months in advance. Give some time so you can plan that out as far as what the plans are. It's also kind of an ongoing conversation always, because I like to say, how many employees do you expect to have in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, so the hardware can meet their needs. You want to have a server and other equipment, the network that can meet adding 5 or 10 new employees in the next few years.
Now you mentioned servers, so I'm hearing a lot of like cloud-based, in terms of topic. Um, where do you lean on that in terms of, from a network server, for example? Is cloud better than the physical, the actual machine? I'm sorry if I'm, less in the words in terms of, but so, kind of like the equipment, which is best?
There are advantages and disadvantages to both. If you have a server in house, it can be a larger upfront expense. Plus, also you have the cost of maintaining it and updating it and having it protected and managing it. The cloud is great because you have maybe a monthly or yearly subscription, and then you have another company, maybe the practice management company or someone else like Amazon or Microsoft, that maintains the cloud for you, all the security, and you don't have to worry about that. And they take some of the blame if something happens too. It's on them, to protect the patient data and information. Another advantage of the cloud, that is that you can access it from other sites very easily. You can, maybe from home, if you want to check patients' information or a schedule. If a dentist want to check that, they can do that through the cloud a little easier than having a server in-house. So there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages to it. A lot of it's moving to the cloud. But some dentists and others like to have control of their information and their patient information in-house. When you move to the cloud, it becomes stored with that company that's maintaining it, and they have more control of your patient information. And you don't know for sure what are they doing for security to protect your patient information. You hope that
Got
you can go through an analysis with them and study their security procedures, but they could possibly be hacked. While
Okay.
if you have a server in-house, you can maintain that and have a little control over your security procedures. So plus and minuses for both. Yeah.
Gotcha. So now you've segued into a topic that about being the protection and cybersecurity is an essential component of any, I think, digitized business operations. So in specific to a dental and or physician practice in this case, how does cybersecurity play a part in that in that role? What have you seen, what protective measures should they take as it relates to cyber, security? I mean, we hear so many breaches lately. Again, these were all sort of big, some of them were banks, some of them were, different industries. But to your point, protecting the patient information, in your computer data and where it's stored is important. So I'm asking, how does it play, and what could they do to continue their protective measures?
Yeah, it's a central part of everything that they do. Like any business, if cybersecurity is becoming more and more essential and more important every day, and obviously they have to be HIPAA compliant and protect the patient's information, so they have to take steps to everything that they do, that the information does not get out or is hacked or retrieved by some external party. But yes, cybersecurity is crucial, and there are a lot of steps you can take, like having a commercial firewall in place, antivirus on all the computers, having password policies and user policies. So if an employee leaves, you're disabling or removing their account, because a lot of hacks happen when you have simple passwords and you have
Mhm.
accounts that are not being used, and if someone gets onto the server, they can then extend, or a computer, they can extend throughout the network and do damage. um, Also, you want to have encrypted email, encrypted data, and backups. When a dentist is sending an email to another dentist or someone, they want to make sure that it isn't retrieve that information in the path during that um, from sending it from one to the other. That information doesn't become available. So there are a lot of steps you can do, and training we already talked about is crucial to make sure that employees are aware of the emails that are coming in, how to determine if one is suspicious or not suspicious, and how to respond to it. We do a lot of training with that, or also there are online training courses where they can go through tests and say yes or no, this is a legitimate email, or this is a fake email, and it will make them think about what they're seeing in their inbox and how to respond to it.
So is that the I hear phishing. When I hear phishing, is that the type of email that you need to be more attuned, that in order to not open it because it seems it looks suspicious, but from the eye it seems like a your normal email that you would receive. Is that the type of emails that you should be sort of on guard to make sure that you're not opening something that could potentially affect your system?
Yes, because there are a lot of phishing emails that will trick you very easily. They're well designed and they're becoming more and more sophisticated. So an employee may get an email from the main dentist asking the
Mhm.
patient information or a password to a specific account. And if they reply to it and send out all that information, they're in big trouble. So you have to check where the
Right.
email is coming from, the graphics in the email. You have to inspect it thoroughly, and also you have to go to the source. So if you have any question about anything, ask the dentist, did you request this information? And a lot of times the phishing emails put an urgency to it. So they'll say, your account is going to expire, your
Mm,
password, you need to change your password immediately, or your account will be closed. Click on this
mm.
link to change your password. And that's where they ask for your existing password, and they can get into not only that account, but any other accounts that are using the same password. So
Wow. So that call to urgency, so that call to action of the urgency of it, that could be nerve wracking too from the person receiving it, seeing that, again, it's kind of one of those things where, as you said, from a protective and from a training in terms of protecting, your email is to recognize, like you said, your logo, asking, the physician directly, did you send request the information, um, because that sense of urgency, that's, I guess that's how sophisticated, a person receiving it can be like, oh my goodness, in that sense of, um, I guess it's of like fear invoked in some way, because you kind of, when you want to address it and they're asking you, and there's like, so much in that email pointing you to click and open it. um, that's pretty sophisticated and tricky, in just trying to get some information or trying to, breach your data. That
yeah,
said,
yeah,
yeah.
there was a case, I think, not too long ago, that I think the mainline health system, where one employee got an email like that from the CEO, a human resources employee, to send him information on all the employees, maybe social security numbers and other information. And that was a trick. And unfortunately, the employee sent out all the employees of the mainline health system their social security numbers and other information. The CEO had never requested it, but there, you could look at the email address it was sent from. If it was someone at gmail.com or at aol.com, if you click on it and examine the email address and other information, you can determine, oh, that obviously it should be from mainlinehealth.com, this email address, not from yahoo.com. The CEO is probably not going to email me. So there are a lot of ways you can avoid it. Or if you're, like I said, if you're not sure, just ask someone else in the HR department in that case, or ask the administrative assistant of the CEO, was he requesting this information or not? Because the damage that is done is way worse than maybe the annoyance of asking someone, "Oh, are you sure you wanted this information?"
I'm sure, and I'm sorry to hear that. That's
Yeah,
pretty significant. So let's recap. In terms of the cybersecurity. So there's definitely training, and in that training, should that be an annual also, like just to make sure, remind everyone that if you see this type of email, make sure you're protecting, make sure you're sending encrypted messages if you're doing that, email exchange to another, be it dentist or optometrist or ophthalmologist, whatever your specialties is. And then, and that's an annual training, or is that something you want to put in in your policy, your information technology policy, to say, annually we should do this, and just to make sure that guardrails are, put in place.
yeah. At least I would say at least annually or semi-annually. I would do that, because it's easy to slip back into certain actions when you're very busy too. So you're going through so many emails, and also with passwords, it's easy to kind of go back to what is easy when you're logging into a computer, and then you change it oh, it's easier to change it to password 123 is my password than having a more complex one. So you want to kind of review those policies at least semi-annually, yeah, I would say.
Okay. And you mentioned about passwords. So in terms of, employee hire and termination, it sounds like, as soon as you know that an employee is leaving, that should be something you deactivate right away so it doesn't lend itself to a potential um, login, or things like that, or being able to access, right? So it sounds like as soon as you know the date and time, then that should be like, a checklist in the way of that, and in a termination process of, whether there's a badge or ID, and then it would be, deactivating that password. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, yes. And the more accounts that you have on say, a network Active Directory, then the more chances that you have of it being hacked into. So if you have inactive ones, you want to, or employees that have left, then you want to make them disable those accounts or remove them. So you have fewer really active ones that could be hacked into. And a lot of times unfortunately, they're employees that aren't too happy when they're let go. So you never know how they're going to respond or their sophistication with technology. They can put some type of remote access on their computer or their device to get in there and do damage. So a lot of times it's good to also check their devices, what they were using, maybe clean them and start fresh for another employee.
Okay. So all of this good information that we have, I want to give you the opportunity. So how do we work? How does practice get in touch with you? How do what's the best way with your information, and then to contact you if there's an upgrade that they're interested in, or they're a new practice that is looking to um, purchase a hardware, be it laptop, iPads, desktop and network and practice management software.
They can access information about our company at nucleuscomputer.com. My email address is fjackson@nucleuscomputer.com. It's singular, no S at the end of computer. And then also our phone number is 610-355-1980. They can call that number to contact us. And I urge anyone just to do a Google search, look up our company and see our reputation. I feel that we have very solid reviews and reputation. They'll see hopefully only good things, but we've been, like you said, in business for 15 years now and worked a lot with a lot of dentists, optometrists, and ophthalmologists. And I feel like we have very good experience with the practice management software and their needs.
Great. So I will also recap that in the comments just in case. I'll pop that in once we're done today in our program session, just to make sure that everybody has that information. Thank you for letting us know where to reach you and how to reach you. Thank you for answering our questions. I think those are essential questions when practices are pondering, what the next step is and how do we go about that in terms of information technology. So
Right.
thank you for your time. I really appreciate all the information. I hope that, it's benefit out there, and look, have a great day. I'm excited for all this topic that we just talked about.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Bye bye.